All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is there nominations for these, for the Exceptional Learners Committee board member?
What exactly does that one person do?
So the Exceptional Learners Committee would be your high ability. So your high ability programming in your school, your elementary school, into your middle school. So we get a high ability grant, and that would be a board member who would sit on that committee it's usually administered by our high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Goldstein, and the principals are involved in that. So it would be something that you would be called into. It's a committee that very rarely meets because there's not a lot to it, but it deals with all your high ability students. To explain that further, high ability students they have to test and qualify for high ability. So that's your exceptional learners programming. Do you want me to talk about each one of them?
That would be great. Teacher
Okay.
Discussion Committee?
Teacher Discussion Committee, there was a change 2 years ago that teacher discussion, instead of just meeting with the representation of the teachers union in the school, the legislator at the state opened it up to where all teachers can be involved in a discussion meeting once a month. The board held on to the discussion items that are discussable. Those can be found we have a policy on what is discussable. But basically some generalized areas, and I'm not going to be able to give you every item, but salaries, benefits, contract day, those types of things are discussable. There's really no action at the meeting, but it's a good time for the teachers to bring up concerns about those items. We have anywhere from 1 to 2 people that serve on that committee. It's a tough time. It usually meets at 2:45. So if there's a board member that has a flexible schedule, that's usually one that works. So it's one where it's good to come in and kind of hear what the teachers are discussing with the administration.
Kyle, what you said that time frame, how often, and then is there a particular day of the week that there is done?
It's typically the third Tuesday of the month.
Third Tuesday.
At 2:45.
And does that go on just during the school year itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes if there are canceled meetings if there are no items that are presented in the agenda by the teachers. It's open to all teachers to present items as long as they follow those discussable pieces. So if it's outside the discussables, typically we don't add it unless we feel like the board feels like it's okay to discuss that item.
Is it the board member that heads that up?
No, it's the superintendent.
Superintendent does? Okay. Amy, I would be interested in that one. I know that's jumping forward, but that would be one I'd be interested in.
Yeah, 2:45 for me will be tough.
I just never know my schedule, so.
Right, and then the third one is the Collective Bargaining Committee.
Collective bargaining obviously deals with the teacher's contract and negotiations of the contract. That would be our Active Classroom Teachers Organization, which is ACTO, Wes-Del ACTO. The president is Tony Santino, and his team would negotiate with the administrative team and the board members, 2 board members. And the past historical has been that the president, whoever sits in the president and vice president seat, serves on collective bargaining. That way, as you rotate through the seats, every board member gets the opportunity to serve on collective bargaining. So that is one where you can change that, but that's been the past practice.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So do we have a nomination for, we'll just do one at a time, the Exceptional Learner Committee? Or do you want me to appoint? Okay. Why don't we have Larry step into that role? And then we'll have Carrie do the Teacher Discussion Committee. And we'll leave the collective bargaining as president, vice president, if that's agreeable to everybody. Do we need a motion on that?
You do not,
Okay.
because you have authorization to do that.
Gotcha.
And that's a one-year term, just like we're doing right now for next time?
So we'll do
Okay.
this again next year and we'll forget
Yep,
the process again.
thank you.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, we'll go on to E. We are looking for the nomination or motion to appoint Sharon Fowler as treasurer and Teresa Weitzel as deputy treasurer. We need a
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is adopted. Okay, going on to legal counsel. We are looking for a motion to approve Amy Fox as Church, Hiddle, and Antrim as personal policy and liability legal counsel, and John Becker at Church, Hiddle, and Antrim as property legal counsel for 2025.
Is this how it currently is now?
Correct.
Okay, so I just didn't know that we had to. I've only obviously dealt with John, so that's what my questioning was.
Yep, John deals with any property or like any civil projects, so that's why he's been working with you on the facility and the sewage treatment.
Okay, and do we have those contracts? Like, do we look at those prior to making this decision?
Not usually. You can.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
You need a motion to approve that? A motion to approve Church, Hiddle, and Antrim as our legal counsel.
Second? Nope.
I personally would like to see the contracts before we're approving them.
I would like to look at another attorney closer to home.
Okay.
I know the board's used Beasley and Gilchristen before, because that's one of their areas, is boards like this here.
All right. So since that wasn't adopted, we just move on to the next.
Yeah, you didn't get a second, so the motion died on the table.
Okay. All right, so we're looking to get a motion.
Well, I do have a question. How do we go about looking at another attorney?
I mean, I think we probably have to put out some request for.
Yes, probably RFP.
Mm-hmm.
When the board made the switch before, just some background, when Bill Hughes was your school attorney for years.
He's retired.
Correct.
Yeah.
When Bill retired, they decided to open it up and entertain other attorneys, and so I believe they did that in a public meeting where they had several other attorneys show up.
Okay.
I think we ended up getting 2. Church, Hiddle, and Antrim work with several schools around us and work with a good majority of schools. Now, Andrew Manna is one that from Church, Hiddle, and Antrim that talked with us along with Amy Fox. Amy comes out of their Fort Wayne office, and John comes out of the Indy area.
Okay.
So they just, they were one of them that the last board decided when Mr. Hughes retired that was the way they were going to go. So
Do they just set up meetings with them, do some research and find?
what they did last time is they just had, they had me, they said seek out several different firms, and each board member can give some firms that they would like me to seek out, and I'll schedule that, and then they come in and meet with you. They, typically the board gave their current a chance to also come to the meetings and have an opportunity to speak to. So
Okay.
that's up to you guys, but that's just something they've done in the past.
Okay. So your suggestion on who you would like to talk to? We just need-
I
no,
would like.
I mean, just submit it to us
Yeah,
and we will get it.
I will. I'll submit it to Kyle and to you as well as the board. Because I can't even pronounce it correctly. Beasley and Gilchristen.
Okay. All right. We will get that moving. Thank you. All right. We need a nomination to appoint a board member for the ISBA Legislative Liaison for 2025. Do you want to give us details on what that
Every
involves?
board, school board has to have one board member who is their legislative liaison for the year. And there is not always a lot that goes with that, but we do have a session this year. There's a lot of things going on. I'll talk about that in the superintendent's report. So those individuals are as active or as inactive as they want to be on the board. So if you're into the legislative process and you are willing to spend the time with the Indiana, so ISBA for everyone is the Indiana State Board Association. So it is the association of all school boards. We are a member. Not every school district is, but the majority are. This would be part of their, they ask for a legislative liaison every year. And it can be the same person, but we've rotated it around. I will tell you, in the past, Mr. Treherne was on this, and Mr. Treherne was involved. He actually went through the seats of the executive committee of ISBA. So,
Kyle, who served before this term here?
I believe legislative was Mr. Dowling's seat. I think Mr. Todd took that on when he was appointed.
Okay. And question, how often, because each of us have schedules,
I've been here now finishing my 7th year, and I don't believe anyone besides Mr. Treherne on his own had been called in to an actual meeting of any sort.
so it's a situation where they're gonna call you in?
They could, but they could also tell you that they need the superintendent to come in your place if you're.
So I guess I misunderstand. It's not something that it's like a meeting where like, hey, you gotta show up down here type
No.
thing? Okay. So it's
Mr.
just on
Treherne,
call.
I'll just be, to be transparency, when Mr. Treherne was on, he was very involved in ISBA.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it involved.
I've never had anyone call me and say, I need that legislative liaison at this date at this time. I've not had that. Now, it could, depending on what the issue would be.
Or it could be.
Or it
as
could
active
be
as you
email,
choose.
it's gonna be email, correspondence will be mostly email.
Okay.
From what I gathered from it, it's kind of like an informative board where
Yeah.
you can just dive right in
Yeah.
and learn.
Yeah. If legislation, if any of that interests you, it's a good one to get into. So, and that's why every board will nominate, so every school board has one.
Do we have a motion for a nomination for that position?
Amy, is there anybody here that's gonna volunteer first before someone gives a name out?
If anybody wants to volunteer, now's your chance. We do need a motion to appoint someone, so,
It's on your shoulders.
oh, it's on my shoulders. Carrie, you seem to be asking some questions about that, so I nominate Carrie.
I was trying to avoid it.
Oh, well. So there needs to be a motion to appoint Carrie.
Motion to appoint Mr. Malco as the ISBA liaison.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay.
Because if not, you'd be.
All in favor?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Congratulations, Carrie.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one question. I'm sorry to ask this. Is it just President to address you or Mrs. President?
I'm not sure what the formal is, but I'm fine with Amy.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to bonds. You will see the amounts needed for the approval of the bonds for those positions. We've got treasurer, deputy treasurer, food service director, athletic director, building secretaries, the 4 of them, and cashiers for 5. Looking for a motion to approve those bond recommendations.
I'll motion to approve those.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's adopted. All right. 2025 board meeting dates, times, and places. All right, so we set these now. We have been meeting the second and third Thursdays of the month. There's a few months that we don't meet because of holidays on one of those Thursdays. We start at 6 p.m. and we've moved to this location so their live streaming can be presented. We're just looking for a motion to continue with that schedule.
And you do have the, just so you're clear, you do have the opportunity to set your dates and your meetings as you want.
Okay.
So you can set your times. The tough thing will be location. We are really only set up with video and access in here.
And we're required to have the video.
And we're required by law by July 2025 to have video. So there are boards that do one meeting a month. There are boards that do 2 meetings a month. It's always been Thursday here. It's Tuesday at other places. So I just want the board to know it is the board's choosing on how they schedule. And that's allowed to the board because of the time commitment that you have in full-time jobs. So just letting you know, you can keep it as status quo, but you also have the opportunity to make changes.
Is there a motion?
I motion to continue with how we are currently in the past 2024.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on this?
How do you feel on the time, the date, and everything? It's worked out good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see any reason to change.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only would be conflicts in these kids' schedules, evening events. I don't have that
That's
issue.
happened like a couple times maybe,
Mhm.
as far as sporting stuff.
The times that I've visited sitting out there, I mean, there's been times that somebody will be absent because of
Yeah.
personal, so.
Work gets in the way sometimes,
Yes.
yeah. So, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is adopted. All right. Board of Finance. So we're just electing the office, we're looking to elect the officers for the Board of Finance, President and Vice President. Historically, the Board, Finance President, Vice President have been the Board President and Board's Vice President. Is there any nominations for that?
I nominate to continue status quo, President, Vice President.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor, or is there a discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved. Okay, so we've got to approve the allocation of interest earned into the operation fund.
You should have Teresa has put a attachment in your file. Interest received for the year 2024 in the amount of $48,222.47 was credited to the operations fund.
So we're looking for a motion to approve that? Looking for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
Kyle, I have a couple of questions.
Mhm.
Can you just give me a little bit of dollar amount that's in there with the interest we might, if you don't know these things? That's no big deal, just asking questions.
Dollar amount in the operations fund.
What's earning to get to the 48,000? Because last year was 38,000 that we put in there. This year is 48.
I can go back, I don't have that right now with me.
It's no big deal.
I can go back and get that, and Sharon can get that for you.
I was just asking.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on just putting that interest earned into the operations fund. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, moving on to fiscal indicators report that you have attached.
Yep, per the statute of the Board of Finance meeting, you have to have the fiscal indicators given to you in this packet, and you have that. It's also always online through the DUAB, Distressed Unit Appeals Board. So the state of Indiana, for any governing body, there is a Distressed Unit Appeals Board. So as you look at the fiscal indicators, it will list, and this can be found for anyone looking for the school corporation. You can find the basic information, which would be your student ADM, and that's average daily membership. So in 23-24 on the second page, it says 847 was your total student enrollment in your district. That is kindergarten through 12th grade. It is not preschool. That does include any special education students that are part of the the Blackford, Delaware Special Education Co-op, which we do have 11 students that are part of the cooperative in Muncie, Delaware, or Blackford, Delaware Cooperative. They go into Muncie for services. You can see also it lists your 24 net assessed value at $346,407,704. And then it also gives you an estimated population in your district, and that is not your student population, that is your actual population of 5,092. You can then look at your third page, which talks about a historical daily average, average daily membership. Kind of gives you that. And you can see, and we'll talk about that a lot. Key there is every kid that comes to your school receives about between $7,200 to $8,000 to be educated. So for every student you have, that's how you get your education fund. So that's called the basic grant. Basic grant is not property taxes. So your property taxes locally do not fund the student's education. It's the state aid that's given to you. Property taxes fund your operations. So lighting, heating, anything that you have to do, custodial maintenance, those types of things. So that kind of runs down why it's so important that you have a good, what is called ADM, or number of students. You lose students, you lose money. And as you can see, we've maintained fairly stable since 15 and 16. We've had a little ups and downs here and there. As you look into fund balances, you can see that in 2018, they made the change from what was called a general fund, and they switched to an education operations fund. So that's why on there you see the colors. You'll also see that from 2020 on, the legislators made new rules on teacher compensation. So your fund balances have gone down because you have to pay teachers a required minimum salary. And we also had several teachers that were way behind on salary, and we've had to catch those teachers up. So your education fund, well over almost 80 to 90% of your education fund is spent on teacher salaries and benefits, which is good. It's where it should be spent. Everything else is spent on supplies in the education fund. So in the education fund, it's anything that goes, think of it this way, anything that goes into a classroom and touches or is in the hands of a kid, including the teacher. That's where your money's spent. Your operations fund is funded by your local tax rate. So your tax rate has been fairly stable, and it's, in fact, 2 years ago it went down almost 10 cents, but your utility costs are going up. So that's a tough one with operations because your light bills are going to be higher, but we're not really bringing in additional tax dollars on operations. So, and the only way to do that is to really pass referendum, and that's very difficult to do. If you look on down at your deficit surplus, you'll see that with all rural schools, as you're trying to match your salaries for teachers, it's putting most rural schools into deficit financing to try to stay competitive with keeping teachers. For example, your neighboring school districts to your east and to your south are well over $50,000 for a starting teacher, or will be, and we are at $44,000. So, and that's pushing it for us to be able to get teachers. So the competition to keep teachers and to pay teachers is only going to get more difficult. And again, the only way you can raise salaries really is to make sure you have a steady enrollment or you're increasing enrollment. A good piece is that you have 30% of your, almost 30% of your students are transfer students. So that means out of your entire 847, 30% of that are coming in from another school district, so they're choosing to drive and come to Wes-Del. So they are choosing that, and they're able to choose. You are losing 13% of your in-district kids that are choosing to go somewhere else or are choosing to be homeschooled. And then it goes through some more colorful tables in there. It gives you your revenue by type. And obviously, when you look at operating referendum revenue, you'll see that one is flatlined because we don't have a referendum. And that really sums up the whole fiscal indicators.
There's no action to take on that,
No.
correct? We're just
It's
reviewing.
just a statute, you have to see those.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm assuming the same thing for the review of investment policy is attached?
Yeah, there's no action on review of investment policy, but this is the Board of Finance meeting, so it's there for you to see your investment policy and to discuss.
Any discussion around that?
Is this 4D?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just have a hard time hearing. So we have 2 officers that does this here, is that correct?
You have 2 officers that so the statute to have a Board of Finance, they can call a Board of Finance meeting if they would like at any time. They can call the whole board, or they can just call just the Board of Finance officers.
Okay.
And historically, who has held those positions?
President and Vice President.
Okay. We're gonna continue, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, we know we've done that, we're done deal. Just verifying.
So this involves investments, is that what it is, or is it Board of Finance?
Board of Finance, since I've been here, they've never called a meeting.
Okay.
You just by a state statute have to have it.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Move on to 4E, approved depository. Star Financial Bank has been ours in the past. Any action on that, or is it?
Yeah, you need to approve it.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to continue with Star Financial, or do they, okay. We're looking for a motion to continue with Star Financial Bank as a depository.
I'll motion to continue with Star Bank.
Is there a second? Okay, so motion dies. So now we need to find another depository.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to see some options on there, not saying no to Star Financial Bank, but I'd like to see what other institutions out there in our community that might be able to do this.
Okay. We will work on getting this. Okay, so moving on to 5 is consent agenda. You have the claims, minutes, and personnel issues, and we typically review and move to adopt them A through C unless there's any particular ones that we need to pull out to address individually. So on 5A is claims.
I do have a question on claims.
Yeah.
I was going through there, we spent over $24,000 on network support. What would that entail?
Can you tell me
Like,
which
there's
claim?
a Power School thing on there, but I don't believe we were with Power School anymore.
Yeah, we were still with Power School on the transition into Harmony. They had all our data, and their contract was due all the way through December 31.
Gotcha.
So,
Like a tailored systems, integrity, accordance.
yeah, Tailored Systems, they control all of our camera systems in the buildings, our camera systems for security, our door access systems. So any of our push-button door access, so to lock throughout the year, are Tailored Systems. What was the other one that you had?
Integrity and accordance.
Integrity, I believe, deals with what claim are you in, December 31 and December 26?
The 26th. They were just
Integrity
all-
should be Greg's networking group that helps support our network.
I just didn't know if we were buying new equipment or if these were just,
No, and Greg gets a certain allotment of a budget that he
well,
spends.
that's what I didn't know, if we had like
He
money
spends that out
had
of
to
his
be, like,
budget.
spent by
Yeah.
the end of the year or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so this would be spent out of his budget that he already has.
Okay. It just was, there's normally not that many on there, and
And you're right about the Power School. The Power School we have switched to Harmony, but the data that they already had that we had to convert over, we were still in contract with them to have that.
Okay.
And so they still have our data up until now, and now, basically we have to pay to get our data back.
Gotcha.
And that's
Okay.
kind of how that works.
I had a question too regarding all these, I understand the funding and the coding for the funding, but what about the programs and the coding? Do you guys have like a glossary or an index that you have for a summary?
Yeah, we can
Could
get
that
you
be
that.
shared?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can also meet with any board member to show them how you can easily access that on the DLGF and which is the Department of Local Governance and Finance. And I'd be happy to show you.
Awesome.
And any public can see that too, what the codes and all the object codes and all your program. So yeah,
Okay. And then the budget for 2025, access for that?
the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in there as well?
Yes, our budget is always online, and it's always posted, it has to be by law.
Mhm.
And so I can show you where that is, and we can link that up onto our website very easily. In fact, there should be a link to what's called Gateway, and there's a public entrance into Indiana Gateway. But then also on the DLGF, you'll be able to even get the budget order for your Delaware County, and on that order, it'll show you every municipality's budget, approved budget. So, good question.
Okay.
I do have one more. Is there, I just don't know what to ask, don't know what, when I look at these, is this small amount of information of maybe a business name or whatever, and I know there's numbers you use on the side, but it's just hard to sit there and kind of go through it and then sit there going, I don't know what this is for $10,000 or this expenditure. I'm not trying to pick on any names, just one that stood out, and then I'm just asking this as an example. There's a name on here, Austin Williams, and it just says professional service. What I'm getting at is like, I don't even know, I don't have a clue, and I'm gonna turn around and say, yes, this can be paid, but I don't have an idea what it is.
Okay. So, what you're getting is a fund report out of Computrol, which is the, basically what we use to keep all the books that Sharon uses through all
I
of
get
that.
I get that.
And so these are what a lot of your government municipalities will use.
Mhm.
I.
It's just hard for me to sit here and say yes to something when I don't know what I'm saying yes to. And I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but at the same time, I want to
So can you, if you would,
Yeah.
what page is Austin
Well,
Williams?
I'm probably in another section, because I know we jumped around, so,
A lot of times when you see a teacher on there, and
Well-
it's professional services.
Yeah.
What it'll typically be is they've gone to a conference,
uh-huh,
and we've paid for that out of the professional services in our appropriations.
uh-huh,
So it's titled professional development or services. And so he's gone to it could be a technology conference.
Sure.
And inside of that, when they fill out to go to a conference, they fill out a form. It comes to the principal approves it, and it comes to my office.
Mhm.
And then we can approve whether we want to pay for the conference fee, the hotel fee, and any mileage reimbursement.
right,
And so a lot of times, what we typically only pay for is the conference. Only on certain things like a grant for high ability that we talked about earlier. If they go to a high ability conference and we have grant money that allows us to pay for the hotel and the lodging, then we'll do that. But typically, let's say we allot or appropriate $20,000 in our budget for professional development or professional services. And in that $20,000, it's in our budget that is only going to be used for a conference or a continuing education piece. So I'm going to assume, if I looked in there now, to give you more detail in that,
and that's what I'm getting at, I'm not trying to pick on that right there.
we would have to give you the invoice of every one of these claims.
Mm-hmm,
And we could do that.
okay,
That's putting an incredible amount of strain on a very small, you only have two ladies in the office.
I understand.
So that would be an incredible strain. Now, if you have a question, anyone comes in and asks, can I see that invoice for this particular, not just the board, anyone.
Right,
And so I'm trying to say there's ways to see it.
we don't have, I'm not looking at going and being that, through every line item and I'm not looking at that there. But there's some that kind of pops out when you're looking at something. And I just picked on this, it wasn't anything, but I was just like, what's professional service?
Right.
And what is this? I
And
don't know.
And another way the board can handle that is if you look through the claims and there is something that you have a question about, ahead of time, let me know and I can bring that invoice, that particular invoice to you.
Thank you.
The other thing is the board, school boards give the superintendent, who is your acting chief executive officer, the authority to pay those invoices to a certain amount. There's a certain amount that whenever you're going to do a service, it has to be approved by the board.
Correct, the threshold there,
Yeah.
yes. And I agree with that situation there, so.
So I
okay.
think in the past, if there's been something that catches your attention,
Yeah.
we just reach out prior to the meeting.
And I'm not here to reject it, I just
Yeah.
like to sit here and say, hey, can you just help me out a little bit there? Because when I see some numbers, it's like, wow, and then I'm always gonna assume the worst, and I don't wanna do that.
Right.
Well, and you'll get used to seeing the terms or the abbreviations, and it'll get a little bit easier, so, okay.
It
Thank
is
you.
a lot at first.
Okay,
I'm
any-
assuming Sarah's got a background check on file. It was blank on.
You're gonna have to tell me where we're at, Larry.
We're on personnel, but.
Personnel.
Oh, on personnel? Okay.
I mean, I'm sure she does. She's,
Yes, she's coached with us before.
okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, well, we skipped over minutes. Any questions or comments about minutes? Okay, on to the personnel. You've got some recommendations on some hires and the resignation of one bus driver. Any questions, comments?
Will he need to be replaced, or are we gonna absorb that, the bus driver?
Right now, Scott has a replacement for us. He's working on it.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, comments about,
Was the special education aid, was that filling in a vacancy, or was that an add-on?
The special education aid is filling in for a maternity leave, I believe.
Okay.
Am I correct? Where,
it's a vacancy.
who's Tessa Rubel?
She's filling the spot that was left vacant by Mrs. McKean.
Correct. That was prior to when you both came onto the board. So Mrs. McCune resigned, and this is a recommendation to fill her spot at the elementary.
Okay.
And there are, I don't know if you saw the attachments on there, that it'll explain that a little bit more. Okay, so we're now going to need a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through C.
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is approved. We'll move on to reports. We've got superintendent's report.
Yep. I'm trying to catch up for you.
Sorry.
That'll be nice when the secretary has to do the typing. I can keep up. All right, for the superintendent's report, I have a facilities update. Baseball, softball is still weather permitting. We're still moving forward, hoping to have a completion by the end of this month. They should be putting in the metal stairs and finishing out the dugout roofs. Sewage treatment update. We currently have the bond money that we received in the fall and are going to have an RFP for the lining project between $150,000 and to be safe, $200,000 to reline the sewage pipes collection system under this building that goes into. So it's not the sewage plant, it's your collection. I can go into detail, not a great subject to go into detail about, but basically your sewage pipes. What they will do is they will inject and then reseal and create a new pipe inside the pipe because you have that groundwater issue. You're going to do we decided that, and I felt the last board when we decided this, would like to do the RFP process. That allows it to be local too, so you get local vendors, not just 3 vendors from somewhere else, out of state or somewhere. So this will be put in the Star Press so that everyone has an ability to put in a proposal for you. Also, if it's an RFP process, it doesn't always mean you have to just go with the lowest. You can also go with, at that point, what you think is the most quality. So that's kind of the difference in that and just taking in like 3 bids. So those, if you would like, Schmidt Associates, which is your engineer, your architect, and United Consulting would be happy to come to a meeting, kind of walk you through that process. And we were working with John Becker. He was currently working in that situation. There will be, you can still utilize him, but he will be working out of contract since we didn't approve them, so we'll have to kind of work that process through and see how that works. Because he was working on that project with them.
Kyle, do you have a current packet of anything on this here project that you've gotten before that we
Yeah.
could get as far as new?
United
programs?
Consulting can give us one of those.
I would like to have that because I have no clue of what it is, what we're talking about or anything. And I'd like to be brought up to date on that if possible, and I feel Shane would be the same way. If we can get that packet, whether it's an email, which
Yep.
might be the best way, so that way.
Yeah, I
we
can
go
talk to
through it.
Troy Casey at United Consulting. They've done all the work. They, to catch up on that, what they did was they televised all the lines, which they sent cameras down through there, found out where the cracks and where the problems were, went through all the manholes. Then from there, got their estimation of what the cost would be to repair with the injection lining. No matter what happens, what the board decides to do in the future with the sewage treatment plant, IDEM has said you have to fix your collection system. Yeah, they're 2 separate pieces. So if nothing is happening, basically everything you're doing now with this money is across this side of the creek. So
We've already paid for United Consulting to run the cameras and everything else down
it's all
through
being
there,
paid for
so
out
it's
of our
al-
bond
yeah,
funds.
So it's already existing.
So, yeah, we've done all that because when that happened, that was being done because in the compliance report, no matter what direction you decided to go, you have to fix your collection in this building.
Regardless.
Because you're getting groundwater, which when the groundwater is getting into the pipes, it's flushing out the system on a heavy rain. And then you're getting solids into the creek. So IDEM would like to see what a time period would be with that collection system corrected and see what your flows turn into. And then that'll also give you a better understanding of if you were gonna make another package plant, what size you want it to be. So I've always said this, when you put an air conditioning unit or a HVAC on your home, your square footage matters. It's kind of like that. Your flow of sewage coming in depends on how big your plant needs to be. You make too big of a plant, it's not working properly. You make too small of a plant, it's not working properly. So getting this flow and allowing us to see how that works and getting a couple of months of our testing in will help us to decide what the next phase 2 would be. Phase 2 then becomes everything across the creek, which is your sewage plant.
Yep.
Kyle, on phase 2, what is the time frame because I know we got a bond, so I'm not familiar on that time schedule. What's the time frame that you're looking at on phase 2?
We don't have a bond for phase 2.
I know we don't have one, but something's got to happen for that there. What is the time frame that you're looking at?
I don't have a time frame. That's the board's. That's up to the board.
Okay.
I didn't have it. I don't set time frames on bonds. The
I
board does.
know you don't have a time frame, but a generalization that, hey, we're gonna look at this at 2032? No, we're probably gonna look at it this type of time frame.
We've been trying to find a solution for the sewage treatment plant for 5 years.
Mm-hmm,
So,
okay.
Didn't we have to meet IDEM, didn't we have to do a compliance letter with them and kind of give a timeline on
yeah.
that?
Yep. And we had to have our engineers involved in that and our architects, which that's what we submitted. And then I just submitted the update that we completed milestone 1.
Yeah, we already had that set in motion, and IDEM approved it.
That was a meeting we had with IDEM.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I really think that the board needs to be prepared to see, and I've had communication with a council member with the Muncie Council, but want to keep your eye on the proposed annexation. that is being proposed by Muncie. They're proposing to annex part of Farmington, which is not in our district, but then Heron Point, which is in our district, and also the nonprofit Westminster. And so this board would probably want to know what kind of property tax impact, if any, that would have, and if there's any plans of redistricting in the future, what that would look like even 10, 15 years down the road for your students. So one of the council members just kind of reached out and said, and asked me, has your board had any communication at all with anyone from Muncie on this? And I don't believe any of you have, so I will basically let them know we haven't. I don't know the details of it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but they're proposing to the Heron Point and, like I said, Westminster, and a section of Farmington would be redistricted in to be the city limits of Muncie.
Now, would it include houses that are along like Bethel and down that?
I haven't been given any maps. There were I believe there were 6 community meetings. I was going to attend one of those, but we had the attorneys attend, and there wasn't a whole lot that was given. Delcom's attorney also attended. There wasn't a whole lot of detail given there. So I just think it's something you want to be really aware of, what that annexation would do. I've also been told that there are some homeowners in those areas that aren't even really aware that annexation. It could be very simple. I don't want to say anything bad is going to happen. It could be very simple. The property tax dollars that go to this school may still go to this school, but it's a question that needs to be answered because that will impact your operations fund. It may just be a services situation where they're just going to provide Muncie sanitary and those types of things to those locations. But I think it's something that we need to stay on top of. I just want to give an overview of legislative. We're getting ready to go into a session, a pretty big session with a new governor. With that will always be new issues with the budget. Some key issues with this budget overview is that it's going to be a $44 billion that's going to be allocated for focusing on K-12 education, which is about 50% of the budget, and Medicaid runs about 19% of the budget. There's going to be limited room for new programs due to rising costs. I've taken a couple notes. Property taxes, Governor Braun proposes resetting to the 2021 levels. Concerns over funding laws for local governments. Agencies, not only schools, are concerned about perhaps some funding cuts in local government if we return to those levels. Again, I'm not taking a side. I'm just telling you, some of the things that are being proposed. Income taxes. There's a plan to reduce income taxes and eliminate the business tax floors. And tax credits. Proposed increases for renters and disabled veterans. Public and behavioral health is a big one. There's going to be a look at cigarette taxes, potential $132.6 million in annual revenue from $1 pack increase. So if you increase cigarettes $1, that's how much money. Now, sadly, schools don't receive that money. So that would be something we'd love to have. Behavioral health's huge. Funding sought for crisis and mental health will be a big push this time. And Health First Indiana, the ongoing public health funding to improve outcomes and reduce Medicaid costs. As you know, Medicaid really hit the surplus when that came through. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on our lawmakers to try to meet everyone's needs, and someone's going to get a little bit of a cut. I'm just trying to make sure you know that. What could happen is K-12 education funding from 25 to 27 could see no increase. Schools are going to face inflation, and also we've lost that federal pandemic relief money, the ESSER money, so those are going to be hitting. There are also calls for higher salaries, improved benefits, and parental leave to continue. The current baseline salary is $40,000. The average teacher's salary in Indiana is $60,557. And there's going to be continued literacy endorsement requirements for teacher license renewal. And if you don't know what that is, I'd be glad to have Mr. Reagan and Mr. Purdue come in and kind of give you that. Mr. Reagan knows all about the literacy endorsement requirements for the elementary. It's going to be moving up into the high school. They're on top of it. they'd be glad to give the board an update on that. So if we went into collective bargaining, those that are going to be on collective bargaining, you've heard 40,000 is the base now, but your average teacher pay is 60,000. The average teacher pay at Wes-Del is just over 50,000. School safety and other bills are going to be a main concern. And there's additional proposals I'll talk about, but one big mandate is cursive writing. They would like to see cursive writing instruction back into curriculum, and of course curriculum transparency for parents, and efforts to expand summer school funding and introduce accountability for reporting violence against school staff. Here are some bills of highlight. Probably the biggest bill right now of concern for a lot of people is House Bill 1136, School Corporation Reorganization. You may have heard this. There's a plan to take IPS, Gary, Union School Corporation, I believe there's 5 total school corporations, and turn them into charters. There's also a bill that proposes that if your in-district enrollment of students not going to your school, so your in-district kids exceeds 50%, you would become a charter school. So we're at 13%, thankfully, but if we were to increase where a number of our students decide to go elsewhere and we get to that, you would become a charter school. What does that mean? That means that it would dissolve the school board. There would be no school board with a charter school, and it means that your local control would basically, and your accountability with the state would really not exist. You'd be able to run things kind of how you want it as a charter, whoever that was that runs it. House Bill 1041, participation in interscholastic sports. This will be a hot button topic. It has been a hot button topic. Basically, it's saying that you have to be a biological male to play biological male sports or male sports. You have to be a biological male to be in a male sport. You have to be a biological female to be in a female sport. That's another one that's going to be a hot button. Teacher compensation, Bill 1045. We talked about that a little bit. School transportation. This one may seem like not a lot, but it can really hurt rural schools. Basically, you can't have students cross the road. So you're going to have to pick up students on that side of the road. So it'll be against the law to have a student cross the road. I'm not against that. I think that's a good way to look at your safety. But it could reroute your bus routes and extend your bus routes and have kids on the bus longer, have them getting home later, getting on earlier. There's a House Bill 1170 to eliminate gun-free zones. So you are a gun-free zone. I would hope even with this bill it would maintain that, but there is a push from Representative Jim Lucas to eliminate gun-free zones. The last two are Senate Bill 35, which is cursive writing. We still teach cursive writing. And Senate Bill 36, school counselors, they're looking to reduce the workload on school counselors so that they can meet with students more. I don't think anybody would be against that at all, but we'd like to see what they mean by reduce the workload. Those are everything I have on that side. Miscellaneous items I have are your board calendar. There should be a link in there for you to always see your board calendar and kind of see what's going on. And I have some good news to report. Our girls wrestling program in their first year has 4 wrestlers that have qualified for the regionals. Mr. Knuckles here? He's not here. I want to make sure I get this right. If I don't get it right, I apologize to anyone. I'm going with what I believe is correct, but I believe it's Sophia Gropp, Paisley Chambers, Kirsten Ronan, and Letty Watt that have moved on. But I also want to let everyone know that Nevaeh Bevelheimer placed 5th. And overall, we did a really nice job in our first year in girls wrestling. So congratulations to those ladies. I want to congratulate our boys basketball team, but especially Josiah Love on becoming, I believe, the 7th 1,000 point scorer in school history. And so congratulations to Josiah. That happened at Tri. And he's still got a lot of season left. And so the school points record might be in jeopardy for Josiah to reach. And I want to read to you the Betty Clark Foundation. They are, if you don't know, Betty Clark basically set up a foundation that awards our teachers grants. And this fall, they were able to award the following grants. Austin Williams received $7,500, and this is breaking news, so they don't know this yet. Austin Williams received $7,500 for museum exhibit, STEM day events, and engineering equipment. Daniel Hansen received $10,000 for Project Lead the Way STEM supplies. David Lamb, $3,000 for 3D printers. Emily Love received just about $8,000 for speakers and mics. Heather Lehman received almost a little over $2,500 for Everblock Stage of Readers Theater. Janelle Romo received $540 for classroom novel sets. Kelly Whitinger received $501 for developing decoders subscriptions. And if you'd like me to get into detail on these, I'm sorry, I probably don't know exactly what the details on all those are. And the kindergarten team of Mrs. Bruner, Mrs. Bevelheimer, and Mrs. Dyke and Mrs. Fields received $2,847 for hands-on learning tools. Total to be awarded is almost $26,500. So just wanted to give a shout out to the Betty Clark Foundation for supporting Wes-Del. So I think that's really, really awesome that they did that. So, and every fall and spring they give grants to our teachers. So that's all I have.
Any questions, comments? Not, we have item B under reports is the month-end financial reports. You have the appropriations, the funds, and the revenue reports. You have a chance to review, and if you have any questions. If not, we'll move on to old business. Fall 2024 policy revision. There's a second reading on, I don't know how many of these
I believe
six
you,
of-
yeah.
Five. Since it's the second reading,
No action necessary, just, we would bring those back to the next meeting for approval. So if you would read through those and see, they're in the public content section, so the public can see those as well.
so do you want me to read them? one
No,
by one?
you can if you want. You don't have to go through each one.
Okay.
We did that at the last meeting, so if anyone wants to reference back to the live stream, but I can, if you want me to, or you can feel free to do the title at least.
Okay, so the five that are on this policy revision are gifts to school employees, use of school equipment, vaccine and immunizations, emergency medicines, gifts to the corporation. Questions for those? All right, moving on to new business. We've got the 25-26 school calendar, 2 drafts.
No action this time. This is just so you can see. I will tell you that the teachers have responded, teachers and staff, and the overwhelming pick from their side was draft 2.
And the difference, because I was going back and forth on my computer and I did not even pick up the difference. The end date is,
The end date is different on draft 2.
But
So
what
on
made it
draft,
What made it different?
on draft 1, you would end on May 27th for students and May 28th for teachers. Now, you have the following days as out unless they're makeup days, and those would be MLK Day, President's Day, and Good Friday. You start the same time on both calendars. Start date would be August 6th. Teachers would come back the 4th and the 5th. You have a full week at fall break. You have 3 days at Thanksgiving and a full 2 weeks at Christmas on both. And a full spring break and the Friday before spring break on both. The difference in 2 is there's a parent-teacher conference day in October, would be October 17th on draft 1, and that would be just teachers. What we would do to shift our final date with kids to May 22nd, which is the Friday before Memorial Day, and get kids out earlier, still starting on the 6th, and is that we would take away that second day. So we have the evening parent-teacher conference night in the gym for the high school, and then elementary does their own setup of what they do. And we typically, on draft 1, would have the evening, and then the next day, which would be Thursday evening, then the next day, Friday, we wouldn't have students, and teachers would come in until noon, and that extra evening and that half day would quantify as their 5th contracted day. If we take the second day away and make it a late start day with our House Bill 1003, which allows us to do professional development, still have the teachers stay late and then work in the morning on that delay day, that would hit their requirement of hours. You bring kids in on the delay day, you then capture that day you were going to be out with kids, so you actually pick up a day in first semester. And then what you do is you make Good Friday a virtual day, and instead of an out or a makeup day, so students are there, but it will be virtual. And then that would shift your 2 days and bring students last day, Friday, May 22nd, and they wouldn't come back for 2 days after Memorial Day. So you're capturing that through that.
Okay.
And the teachers were given both of these, and they chose 2. Administrators, do you want me to put you on the spot, or do you care to, either one's good?
I chose to.
You chose 2, okay, okay.
Okay. Moving on to.
I'll put that, by the way, I'll put that back on for approval next meeting.
Naming a facility discussion. Carrie, I don't know if you want to.
Yes, I do.
Lead us in this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much. Probably back in November, when I talked to Larry, I told him there was 2 things on my radar as far as agenda. This was one of them. This, I feel, is a individual, and it's Pamela Meyer Fisher. And I don't know her real well. I didn't go to school here. My kids had her as a teacher. But when I sat there and listened to our community, I listened to the stories, I listened to the feedback that I have received, and I'd like to give each board member, we put something together on Google, and we had over 100 responses for this wall dedication. Glance through it, you might recognize some of the names, but what's astonishing is the dates of the years. We're talking 2020, currently around the community as far as graduation. We're looking at people back in the 1970s. And this has astonished me for this type of 50 years. 50 years for one location. Pamela could have went to several different places, and instead, she chose to stay here. And when you skim through some of these here stories, it's touching. It really is. I would like to do a hall dedication. I know some people said, hey, how about a classroom? The thing is, I want people to walk into our community as far as our school system here, and this here dedication is right there. I don't want it to be down a hallway where it's lost and forgotten. I want it to be seen, because there's going to be people walking in, not having any kids in school, and remembering the stories, the way she's helped them out. And they're right here. They're right here. They're neat stories. It's from the high achiever to the low one that she has effectively done this here. And once again, over 50 years of that there. My vision is, far as the dedication, we have an entrance next to the office there. It would be up above is my vision. It would be the Pamela Meyer Fisher. Getting touched up. Anyway.
Well, we appreciate your consideration, and, I think that my thoughts on this, so our current policy is that we
And
don't.
Kyle provided that to
Yeah.
me, and I understand that. I hope the board moves forward. I hope the board doesn't hesitate whatsoever. This needs to be done. She took 50 years.
Right. Well, so just reference, our current policy, we don't do any kind of naming of facility or placed within the facility unless a person has been deceased for 3 years. So in order to be able to do something like
Yes.
this, we are going to have to change policy, and that's just not something we do on the spot.
How's come? I mean, we can make a motion to do that.
Because we have policies and we place them for considerations for, like the readings that we've done tonight, where we've had this as the second reading. We want people to be able to
Well, we
know
can-
that there's a policy being considered.
We can abstain from a second reading.
Well, this again, I have,
And
I
the
enjoy
reason
Mrs.
why I bring this
Fisher.
up is,
Can I
no, I'm sorry,
speak?
I'm sorry.
But I'm kind of a planner, and I this brings forth, there's a lot of people in our community that are probably very deserving of recognition. So if we're gonna change our policy, we need to be able to consider what ramifications that has. I mean, are we going to have, 10 people now nominated to be recognized? What does that look like? We will run out of halls, or we'll run out of classrooms. So I think that I did some research on other schools' policies, and I mean, we have a lot of the local ones, and then I just random ones that I came across. So I think that if we're going to do something like this, I think we need to be very thoughtful in how we make this change, and kind of think for the future and not just make a change based on one person. And again, I have no qualm about recognizing her. I just think we need to be very thoughtful in what that process looks like. And, you can read through some of these, and some of the local ones are very kind of cookie cutter. Ours looks like it probably started very similar to theirs, and then it had been adapted over the years. I also think there's some that have very good ideas about having a committee in place. So when somebody has somebody that they want to recognize, they do the process of filling out the nomination form, getting that to the committee, and the committee would be, people from the school board, community, teachers, and then they make that decision like once a year. So it's not just a ongoing, when somebody feels like a sort of preposition. So I just think that we need to kind of think through this and what that process looks like. So again, this is just some research I did, some references so you can look at what I found. There's more options out there. I just think that it needs to be kind of thought through all the way, and not just a decision made for one particular person, when, again, there's so many people in our community and our school system that could be very worthy of recognition if we start this.
I'd like to suggest maybe like a Hall of Fame or a Wall of Fame. That way, there is plenty, I mean, this lady's very deserving of being honored. But we do have other past staff and teachers that they should have the same opportunity to get honored.
Yeah, and the one thing I liked about the nomination, like a committee that's being involved, and kind of the nomination process, is we're gonna get names that we don't know. Like, if it was somebody from 25 years ago that was here, I don't know them. So if you have a form or the process where they can provide you more information about this person and what they contributed, and kind of like you did here, where there was people that are giving their stories about what impact they made on their lives, I think that would be very helpful for a committee that could make their recommendations for us then to make a motion on. But that's just, again, my thoughts on that.
I disagree. This is one person that it's a catalyst that's so far ahead of everybody. We need to move forward.
I think that's kind of unfair to say that about the other teachers. She's a
I'm not
great
saying-
lady, but there's other people that's put in a lot of time and
You
had
know,
a
when
big
that time-
impact on students.
When that time comes, that's fine.
What are we gonna do with them, though?
Well, then you make a decision and you come up with a plan and you do it, and then we'll sit there and decide.
I think, I just mentioned the plan, a Hall of
So
Fame or
why
Wall
don't
of
we,
Fame.
why don't we start the basis of what Amy's talking about and put a board together and proceed and moving forward, so at least there's some ground being gained? What do we need to do about
understand
putting a
that.
board together and getting the proceeding?
I mean, I don't think that we can act on a policy change
maybe not necessarily a
Right.
policy change, but you're stating a board.
Well, I'm
or
just saying if
something
we
for a
we're going to
review,
change a
and she could be
policy,
the top number one.
we just need to think about what that looks like and not just put one procedure in place for one person and then in a year it's gonna be somebody else or some other ask, and I think
Or
if
some
we.
type of nomination process,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's an evaluation or review, and
I'm not disagreeing with that process, but not in this case. Not in
Do
this
we have
case.
any
This is
other
beyond.
teacher that's even remotely close to
Not even
being
close.
50 years?
None.
I think,
Shirley
didn't Mrs.
Thacker-
Thacker?
Shirley Thacker was
like
pretty
49
close.
years?
oh yeah, she was in the elementary.
Shirley Thacker
I
was.
think Deb
And
Baldwin
she
had to be
still-
here 40
she
plus
still
years.
assists, doesn't she?
Mrs. Thacker was close.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
we-
he's talking
there, I
about
think there's
Mrs.
probably more.
Mrs. Baldwin was, I think if you look at 40 years, I think,
Baldwin.
I don't know for a fact, I do know that Shirley Thacker was very close
Deb
to
Baldwin was
50.
my
She may have made
elementary.
50, but she's got to be close. I know that she and Pam would be the closest to that level of 50.
She's a deserving person to have the honor, but I don't think we need to exclude everybody else. We need to have.
We're
them.
not excluding everybody else. We're taking initiative on a person I feel very strongly about that needs to be done now. She was done wrong when she left this here school.
She wasn't done wrong.
Okay, that's your opinion, mine's
50
different.
years.
Hey,
Do you want me to
that's
talk
my
about
opinion,
policy?
you got your opinion.
Kind of how we do you want, is there a question about how we would go about the policy?
Yes,
amendment?
I had a question on how we would set up the,
Typical policy amendment, because when you look at your policies, we have to keep in mind, and that's, my role is to protect you, because your job is policy and finance. That's your number one job. When it comes to policy, yeah, you can make a change if you want. It would not, I would never recommend the board to make a change in one night on any policy. Here's why. You have policies that deal with suspension and expulsion. And you are the board that if a student is expelled and they don't agree with the determination of the building principal, they don't agree with the determination of the expulsion examiner after that, or the superintendent, they appeal to the board. The only thing I would say, and I know this is a reach, but this is what I would tell you about all your policies. I would say go through the correct procedure to amend your policy, because that parent might remember the fact that there was a policy that you just made a quick change on, and they may say to you, when you go back to reference, well, our policy states we have to do this, they might look at you and say, but I've watched you change that policy on a whim before.
Oh,
I know it's a
there
completely
needs to be a
different
due
policy.
process for
I know it's a
everything.
completely different
But-
policy, but as your day-to-day operator,
Yeah.
I would tell you all your policies fall under your policy book and then your administrative guidelines. We have some policies that are very, very simple, much more simpler than naming a facility. But I think you have to hold the integrity of the policy procedure. But you can say, we're gonna break that. But where do you draw the line down the road if there is a situation that comes before you and a parent references that and says, well, I've seen you do this before.
where are the policies and the procedures?
Policies are
Yes.
found, so the policies are found on our website for anyone to see. And you know what? Let's see if this works, Mr.
It's at the
Roman.
top of your board books too.
This will help everybody. Mr. Romine's our tech guy. He's usually got me all set up here. Let's see if this- Of course, when I want it to work, it
Takes a second.
Okay. So if you look at the screen, when you go to our main page, you click menu and you'll go over to our district. And when you click our district, you'll go down to school board. And down here, you'll see all kinds of things. There's board policy. You click board policy and it will take you in to all of our policies. From here then, you can either search if you have a keyword you want to search. So for like naming of a facility, we could just put naming. And we get naming of corporation facilities. And then we get, it is the policy of the school board that any request to name facilities and/or areas after person shall be evaluated using the following criteria. Shall have made significant contributions to the enhancement of education or to the well-being of community, state, and nation. Any employee so honored must have terminated employment prior to the selection of his or her name by the board. Areas outside the building proper shall be used for naming purposes where appropriate, and an individual considered for naming a facility after them must have been deceased for at least 3 years. The board adopted that in 1994, and they revised it in 2008. So it's been revised. It can be revised again. Typically, I think your initial was how, the procedure. So it follows a lot of like your reading. So you would send it back for amendment on language, and you would say, it could be as simple as you want to take the last line out, or you want to put in a special circumstance that the board has the ability to over.
And we would present that as a new
But the
topic,
reason,
correct?
but the
And then we'd
reason you
talk
would
about the
present,
following.
because you have to allow your public
Access
who
and
you
time. Yep,
serve to
absolutely.
comment on the amendment, the
Absolutely.
presented amendment.
Okay.
That's your first reading. Then you would come back for a second reading and approve on the second reading. You can
Right.
do that.
Yep. Okay.
So
Perfect.
now I don't know that there's any penalty for not doing that. I'm just saying that it's not that I'm not saying that this is important. I'm just saying looking at the integrity of all your policies, because that is your number one role, is policy and finance. So you could get this done. You have another meeting in January, and then you have 2 meetings in February. You could have it done by the first meeting in February.
Yep. It's just a due process, is basically what
Right.
it is.
You can suspend rules as well.
But that is completely up to you guys.
This could be the start.
I just don't think making an exception for one policy, again, it just leads to,
So then if we wanted to amend that, we're talking about it now.
well, we'd have to present it.
And we'd have to present it on the following, and then by February, it can be discussed, essentially, if we move forward.
I also want to just let you know I did receive a letter of a person who couldn't be here tonight, Sherry Grant. She sent me a letter in support of this, and I will forward that to you in an email so you have that for your documentation. She also signed this, I checked to see, but since she sent the letter, I wanted to make sure that you knew that she sent a personalized letter in support of it.
So,
I'd like to make a motion to move forward in the naming of the hallway of dedication to Pamela Meyer Fisher. And to suspend the rules.
so I guess I asked for a second. Is there a second?
I love Pam, she's a great woman. But we've got to follow the policies and procedures. If there's an amendment that needs to be made, 1 month is not going to be a significant factor, in my opinion.
I kind of, I guess, follow with Shane, and I see both sides of it. I love Pam. I called her my work mom or whatever, but I mean, I do love Shirley too. I mean, she helped my son greatly. So I think if it's something that we can offer open opportunities for other teachers as well, I think that would be great. We just do need to have the guidelines and things, and I have no problem whatsoever putting Pam at the top of the list.
It'd be the first one.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, in making the
Yeah, so what do we
amendment,
need to do that?
There's no second.
in order to get the process flowing, then what we need to do to do the amendment, whose responsibility does that fall upon?
That would be me. You need to let me know if you want me to bring you language for the first reading from other policies, or if you just want to amend the current policy, and any board member can bring in their own language. But typically the board would ask me to find language, also talk to the Indiana School Board Association to see if they have any legal to help us with that. So I can get examples. Typically what I do is look for other boards, ask other superintendents, how do you handle this situation? And give you examples, give you some options, and bring those back to you at first reading. Also let the public see those, and they can speak on those, and then come back then basically what you say is, we'd like to see this one, we check it, we bring that back for second reading, and you can say on second reading you want approval. So that would be, let me make sure of my dates here. I'm thinking we're looking as quickly as that first meeting in February. So we would be back in here for first reading on the 23rd, and then the 13th of February would be the approval or second reading, if you're satisfied with the language that you get. Is that what the board would like to do?
And that would state that we would put together a board, or,
You would, yeah, that's where you're gonna have to work together to figure out what you wanna see.
Whether it's just changing this current one or making.
You as a
other-
board would come
other-
together to decide, are you gonna create a committee? Are you gonna do something, as Larry mentioned, where you're gonna do more of an honor wall? Are you gonna name just the hallway? You know, that's where I'll need clarification. Are we just changing the policy and then moving forward on Mr. Malco's? Or are you guys gonna come together and create a criteria, perhaps a committee?
If we go a different way, we wouldn't have to change this policy or amend it. If we do a wall of fame or a hall of fame or.
If you did a wall of fame, no, because you're not naming anything, you'd have a wall of honor. So yeah, you wouldn't have to amend the policy. That's a great question, yeah. We wouldn't amend the policy because no facility or building is getting named. It'd be like your hall of fame that was created by the Wes-Del Hall of Fame. They created a nonprofit, but you wouldn't have to do that. You could just create a committee. You could put board members on the committee, and you could put teachers on the committee. You could create a criteria for that,
There's a couple examples in.
but that might
handed
slow
you.
down timing.
One of them had a Hall of Fame and a naming policy.
It depends on what you're looking for. Really, it's up to the board's wishes. Are you looking to name this for Mrs. Meyer-Fisher? Then that, I would say, you're looking at amending your policy because of that line that says you're deceased for 3 years. If you're looking at naming things further down the road, that might be for people who are still with us. That might be something. You might want to do both. You know, that's your wishes, what you guys want to do. I will do whatever this board wants me to do to have this ready for the next meeting. So whatever that is.
And it could be even just asking for 2 or 3 options of
Yeah.
what you find.
On a policy.
Okay.
But
Do we need to clear that up right now?
you can, but there needs to be some conversation between the 5 of you to figure out what
way we're
direction
leaning.
you're looking to go here. It doesn't have to be now, but I mean, you're gonna have to communicate. So Mr. Malco feels, you know, I can sense his passion in this. He wants this to happen. So one way or the other, I want to get you guys where you want to be in a timeline. So
You want to discuss it now and share thoughts, or you want to?
now,
Think about it and
if
we
you
can-
have a meeting, you have to follow open door. You call, the president can call a special meeting, but has to have the required hours posted to have that meeting, and that's fine.
Well, like I said, I'd like to see her honored, but I don't think this policy's broken. I don't see any reason to change it. I think we ought to go a different route.
I disagree.
so you're
I
not.
don't see
you're
why we should
wanting
limit it to
name-
a 3-year deceased. Why couldn't some individual be here present to enjoy the honor?
Yeah, I
If we
think
went a
that-
different route, they wouldn't have to be
Can I-
deceased.
So I did
That's
check
what I'm
into
saying.
that, because I wondered why that
We
was.
wouldn't have to change the policy to go a different route with a Hall of Fame or a Wall of Fame.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I did check into that for
Hall of Fame
clarification.
per se
Yeah.
Instead of that, I see.
Because I too had a question, why 3 years, why deceased?
Yeah.
So I checked in with some other superintendents as to why that was in policies. It usually wouldn't occur, but there are instances where things have been named after individuals, and down the road, things have happened, or things have been uncovered about individuals that things were named about. And that's why they did protection pieces like that. That's the answer I received. And that's why, because I didn't understand the deceased piece either. So the deceased for 3 years is to make sure that, I mean, there are school districts that told me, we named an award, or we named this after someone, and then there was a major legal issue that then we had to take that award away. There was another school district that said they've even had a student who was honored for their sports accomplishments or things like that, and then later on, they had to take that. So like when you retire a number, then there's a push to take that away if that person does something in their life. That was the answer I received. So I was curious about that same question. I believe that was added in the 2008 revision, was the deceased line.
And I think I shared, I like the idea of putting together a committee, and it involves part of the community, having a group of, 5 people or whatever it is, and having, I don't remember, I think Alexandria might be one that I'm thinking of, but, they had it, nominations were due by a certain date every year, and that was when you considered it. They had, the committee had so long to vet those nominations, and then they present it to the board, and then the board had so long to act on it. So I feel like there was just a very good idea of what expectations are, and there's nomination forms, and again, gives us information, or the committee information on these people, because, I didn't go to school here. I know I've been around for a while, but I don't know everybody, and I think that there are a lot of people that we could honor in a way like this. Do we want to ponder it, and I can reach out and get some ideas? Like, I can reach out directly to them individually and just get their feel and come back to you with some direction?
I would like to at least have the option of Mr. Mealy giving us the variables of how to amend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like we should have that option to see.
Would
And
you
then if
like to see several other policies from other school districts?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would. We need to have something in place. We need to honor these people, and there's no question.
Yeah.
She's extremely deserving. 50 years, well over half her life.
Yeah.
I
At
mean,
one spot.
that's no question. Yeah, yes, at one spot. But I would like to see if it's feasible to have some variable options to see how the wording, verbiage of the amendment, if amendments needed.
Do you want to include, are we looking at only teachers, or do you want to include any staff or employee? Because there are beloved bus drivers, there are beloved custodians, there are beloved there are some people that volunteered. So if I'm just, hate to even put her out there, but I think of Mary Helen Bink, who
Absolutely.
spent a lot of time here. So when I'm looking for those policies, are you guys looking for this to be only teacher, or do you want it to be must be employed, or can it be a contributor? If a community contributor put 50 years into, say, keeping the scorebook and washing the uniforms, and that's where, now I don't want to say, Mary Helen Bink is in the Hall of Fame, so she's on the wall down in the Athletic Hall of Fame, so I think I'm just saying, if you have a bus driver that's been driving for 50 years, I know my bus driver meant a lot to me. I mean, I was on that bus for an hour, in the morning, an hour in the evening, so I still remember my bus driver. So I want to be clear on where we're going.
I feel like if they contributed to the school.
Would you like a
Would be
little of
tied.
all of that to look at?
I think that's justified. They're employed by the corporation, which is
Okay.
Wes-Del.
Okay, I'll work on that.
You can't rule out one from the other. Does everybody agree with that?
I will work on that, and I'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay. Any other comments on naming a facility? We're gonna go to board comments. We'll just go down, Larry.
I think as a board, we're here to do policy and finance, and we also need to follow the policy and chain of command and do what we're supposed to do. I think we need to make sure we pay attention and do that. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Carrie?
Want to present this to the board. This is with a Thrive Credit Union. would like for our superintendent to please contact Brittany Richards. I put the telephone number on there. Please check it out. This here is a program. It's swiping of the cards. There's 2 schools currently utilizing it. The program will come out of this here, I think she said in March. What it is, Thrive Credit Union is locally here in this Delaware County. They will pay 8 cents for each time you swipe the card. It is a designated card, so the members of that there, they can request right now when it goes into effect, probably has 2 more months, and that is Yorktown Community Foundations is set up, so they'll have a Yorktown card, just like an NFL or a Ball State card. This one will say Yorktown Tigers. Muncie is the other school that's involved. Same thing with them. Their funds, and this is a fundraiser donation, so to speak. This is going to the Muncie Central Community Schools. This credit union would like to involve other schools. That's the reason why I'm presenting that to you there. They guarantee that they will be paying $2,000 to the school. Obviously, the number of swipes, if it goes above that, they'll pay that dollar amount. But I would like to have our superintendent please make that phone call, check that out, that this is something that this here school could be involved with.
So this would be a Wes-Del account?
It's a Wes-Del card as far as the looks of it. We're not getting involved in banking, we're not doing anything. It's a swiping program, and when you swipe that, and you've got a Wes-Del card, so you don't have to go to school here, you don't have to have kids here, it doesn't have to be kids in our it's a community thing. So we have people in our community that says, I'd like to do something for Wes-Del, here's my opportunity. And you just have to change your cards, and that's up to the member there, and they'll get a Wes-Del card. With that Wes-Del card, they'll sit there and you'll make that swipe, and they have a counting system that they do, so it's 8 cents per swipe. The Thrive Credit Union will sit here and say, we guarantee the minimum dollar amount to whatever you decide is going to be $2,000, or it could be more than that.
So you would have to have an account with Thrive?
That's
and,
correct.
Like a savings
But
or
it's not
debit
a,
account?
it's not a thing dealing with the school, if the school's changing it, no. Has nothing to do
So
with
if
it.
you were already a Thrive member, then
Yes.
basically you could just say, I want a Wes-Del card, I want
Yes.
a Yorktown card. If you aren't a Thrive member, you would have to set up an account to be
Yes.
able to get the card.
That's correct. That's what that is.
And then anytime you swipe it, buying a
cents.
pop, even, it's 8 cents that goes to the direct. Now, what
What's
would we
the-
set that money towards?
That's the reason why I'm presenting it to this right here. It could go to the school. It could be something. That's up to the board. It's up to what, and even if it's something that you don't want to do, that's fine. If you do want to do it, here's an opportunity.
Do they have a minimum requirement of people?
I think this is where Kyle needs to make that phone call, get the details, because I don't want to say something inappropriately. But I made the contact, I got the information, I want to bring it back to the board so you can sit there and see it. My first thing, what's the catch? There isn't. This is their way of giving back, picking out a charity, and this is what their next program is with the schools.
Is Brittany willing to just come in to a board meeting?
I can't say Brittany would, but I would feel like you would provide enough information to say, hey, I came across this, which I don't believe, but there you go. I'm presenting it to you and the board as far as an opportunity there. And then the board would decide where, if they do say yes, because you'd have to get artwork together, the layout as far as, and they'll put it together, but it'll be the Wes-Del, there'll be the image on there and everything. And then you'd have to have it designated what it would be, just for school in general, or some certain entity, or whatever we decide to come up with.
Remind me, you said Yorktown and who else?
Muncie Central Community School System. So both of them. It's the Yorktown Community Foundations. So that
Okay.
might be technically different, is what they said, the money's going towards that. Then they indicated that it's Muncie Community Schools. It's going to the schools itself. Yorktown is the Community Foundations.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments?
I don't know if the superintendent needs it for record, but we did our swearing in of oath, so we have that there on hand.
Yeah, I'll take it. Shane gave me his, so he can give it to me at the end of the
Yep.
meeting.
Okay. Shane?
Thank you for everybody that's attended. I've attended myself off of this, and I think this is the most I've seen in my years. That's great. One thing I would ask of furthering the communication aspect to the people in the area and community, especially with students enrolled. I know that there's emails that are sent out, newsletters. If there might be some type of informative posting stating for, family members that we're having this, just every other week, just so they're aware, that they want to come in and have their voice heard. Really, that's it. Thank you for voting for me to represent you.
I really don't have anything because I don't have much of a voice to say, but thank you guys all for coming, and thanks for everybody that, took the time to, out of their schedules to give us the information about Meyer Fisher, and definitely that's something that's gonna be on the top of our list to get done, and try to get some things figured out there and get that taken care of, so.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for coming, everybody. We do have to acknowledge that the school did receive a tort claim notice being filed against the school. The claimants are Neil and Brittany Mock, so we are just acknowledging that we received that, and we'll move forward. So, any other comments? Okay, if not, we will adjourn the meeting. Do I need a motion?
Yeah.
I do need a motion on that.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
I will
second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.